all right, you are here. Very unfortunate that the whole killing didn't really happen. But let's try to poison the guys. Patrick was invited to eat and was offered a goblet of poisoned ale. The saint blessed the goblet and turned it over. The poison alone fell out in the sight of all.
Most of humanity, if you look in the big scale of humanity over history, believes in a spiritual tradition. So what's the catch? Why is it that most people believe in something that's apparently contradictory? Apparently matter is above spirit, and yet everybody believes, at least to a degree, in a spiritual tradition. One of the answers to these questions is miracles. Miracles are basically an expression of mind over matter, and more than that, soul and spirit over matter. And those moments of spiritual miracles stand as the baseline of almost every spiritual tradition. It stands there in the core of the belief, and the belief is revealed. In accordance to that miracle, we can see that spirit is above matter in that way. Christ resurrected. The bush did not burn, and therefore reality is like that. So the miracles have a tremendous psychological importance and a tremendous factor of unity when it comes to all of world traditions.
We will talk in this first series of our lectures on epic spiritual moments about miracle competitions. One thing is you have a miracle, that's already very amazing. Miracles are like a proof for your spiritual size, if you will, for your spiritual accomplishment. But then a whole nother thing is if those miracles, they happen at will, summoned within the context of a competition where you are face to face with another super accomplished being. Within the lecture today, we want to give you a nice overview throughout different traditions and hopefully spark your interest in these accomplishments so that also you can start practicing in that direction. That is always the point in the end of the day. We are moving 1,000+ years from Prophet Elijah to the great Saint Patrick, one of the greatest saints of the Christian saintdom. I don't know how you say that. We are about 400 after Christ. Saint Patrick is the beloved patron saint of Ireland and is known for the St. Patrick's Day. And as we just said, people do get drunk on that day and party a lot, but let's say the roots of this tradition are not so drinky and party as you might think. Now, St. Patrick turned the entire country of Ireland within 60 years from a shamanic pagan tradition of the Druids to Christianity. He basically just stepped on that island and just blasted through it and turned everything on his way Christian. Like everything good and Irish, the English want to claim it, but actually very likely, in accordance to newer research, St. Patrick was not English but French. It's not 100% clear, but it seems more likely this way. Basically, we are at the brink of the Roman Empire falling apart, so it is quite big, and basically Patrick was a son of a Roman official somewhere there, either in South England or in North France. And as a little boy, already at birth, apparently, he was making the sign of the cross, and already as a little boy, he's making all sorts of miracles, and he's just simply Christian, the already born Christian, resurrecting his uncle from death and all sorts of interesting things. When he's a teenager, he gets abducted by a band of pirates who do slave trade to Ireland, which at that time was apparently a relatively normal thing. So he spends about 6 years in Ireland, taking care of some animals there, and interesting fashion, he falls in love with the country and its people. And even though he manages to return back to his parents, he remains with a calling to eventually return back to Ireland. He then, first of all, immerses himself into about 30 years of education in the Christian arts, if you will, praying a lot, learning from Saint Germain and from Saint Martin, who are two of these huge saints as well that we know of, and getting himself ready to become a bishop in Ireland. One of the sort of symbolic, legendary moments is when St. Patrick steps on the shore of Ireland, and it is said there that as he puts his feet on the island, all the snakes dissipated and went away from him. Now, there's no evidence of there being a whole lot of snakes in Ireland at that time. There's not a lot of snake skeletons that have been found. But symbolically speaking, it's this idea of his purifying presence somehow arriving at the shores at that time. This was in 432, at least to the accounts that can be found. 1 year after his arrival on the island in 433, he now takes up the actual battle. Up to that time, he has been sort of going around the coast of Ireland, has been stepping off the boat here and there, finding some sweet followers already, amongst them a young boy who just, when he saw the saint sleeping at the shore, he was just so enchanted that he had picked up some flowers and he was putting it around the head of the saint, and immediately he took him under his wing. And by now he had a little group of friends, some 7-8 people that would go around with him. And now he was ready to go about taking over Ireland in a religious sense. So what he did is he went to one of the big Druid festivities that took place around the Christian Easter on the island, and basically close to the palace of the king. He established his little camp on one area next to the palace in order to make his presence known. Actually, in the Druidic prophecies of that time, it had already been written and described that somebody like Patrick, would eventually arrive in Ireland, and he was known to overcome all the kings and all the priests and become greater than any other person on the island. So the king was not such a fan of the idea that such a person would exist, and now that this guy was showing up there in the plain in front of his palace in the moment of his big Druidic festivity, it was a bit of a slap in the face. And just to make it even more clear what was his intentions, on that day of festivities there was a specific rule of that Druidic tradition that you could not light a fire in that day. There would only be fire lit in the palace, and you couldn't light a fire, and it was the death penalty on lighting a fire. So what did Patrick do? He made a huge Easter fire in the name of the Lord and made it clear to the people that he is there in order to bring about new laws and new ways. Obviously, the king is not delighted. He understands that Patrick is there for the battle, and also understands that by prophecy, very likely, this man is there to overpower him. What he doesn't know that it is in the religious sense and not in the worldly sense. Now, just to give you a little taster of his biography, St. Patrick's biography, it goes like this. In the contest which followed, the saint's chief antagonist was one of the heathen priests who had to delude the people by his magical arts. We are told how he boasted that he had power to ascend to heaven, and how, in the sight of all, he arose from the earth, how the man of God, Patrick, prayed, how his prayer brought the impostor down and stretched him lifeless on the earth, how the king and his people, maddened at the sight, rose against the saint and made an attempt on his life. And this was not the first time that they will make an attempt on his life. And the first day, let's say, of miracle competition, there are several different priests and higher officials, however you want to say, of that Druidic pagan tradition, doing different styles of magic. One of them, for example, creating a whole lot of snow that goes up to the belt of the people, and the whole area becomes dark from all these snow clouds. But he's not able to take the snow away when the king says, okay, enough now, we have a good amount of snow now. He's like, okay, I can only bring snow, I can't take snow away. So Patrick starts praying, and by his prayer, the sun comes back out and the snow disappears. And some more interesting things happen. At the end of that day, the queen is convinced, and she is having faith in her heart, but the king is not happy with what is going on. So he says to Patrick, okay, fair enough, you had your first day. Come tomorrow to the palace and we'll talk more. We'll see what happens. Congratulations. So Patrick goes about his way and knows already in his heart what the king's intentions are. And the king is putting many assassins along the way to take Patrick's life as he's making his way to the palace. But as Patrick knows, he takes along his little band of friends. He gives a blessing to all of them. And as they pass, the king's men can only see a few deers hopping along. So the whole day they watch, they don't see Patrick, they go in front of the king, okay, we didn't meet him, we don't know. A few moments later, Patrick enters, of course, because he had passed in this miraculous way. The king is stunned. And what he does next is, okay, all right, you are here. Very unfortunate that the whole killing didn't really happen. But let's try to poison the guy. So he puts poison into a goblet of beer, ale, and gives it to Patrick. And I can read you this one, it's just a sentence. Patrick was invited to eat and was offered a goblet of poisoned ale. The saint blessed the goblet and turned it over. The poison alone fell out in the sight of all. So he managed to separate the poison from the drink. Wherever you're watching this video, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell and all the little buttons that you could possibly...
We encourage you to hit the bell.
And for sure subscribe also.
Subscribe, yes.
After more and more trials of miracles, Patrick finally suggests, because then the Druids become funny and they're like, oh, no, we will not make fire tricks with him because his god likes the fire, so that's not fair. And then we'd be like, okay, shall we do something with water? The king suggests, shall we throw the books into the water, and then whoever books survive will be the one. No, he baptizes people with water, his god is with the water, and so forth. So finally Patrick is like, okay, enough of all this. What we will do is we'll build a structure, half of wet wood, green wood, and half of completely dry material. And we will put my sweet little boy friend that I have in this dry area, and we will put the cloak of the druid guy on top of this one. So you cannot say I have a magic cloak or something. So we put the druid cloak on the little boy in the dry corner. We take you, my friend, we put you into the wet wood, we put my cloak on you, magical my cloak, we put it on you, and then we set the whole thing on fire and see what happens. And the druid was like, yeah, that sounds good, because everything is in my corner. What could possibly happen? So they do the deed, put everyone in, lock everything up, put everything on fire, and Patrick is praying, and as you can imagine, the magician burns in the house. Again, quite cruel situation. Burns down in the house, and the only thing that doesn't burn is Patrick's cloak. And the young boy, he is completely free from the fire, but the cloak that he was wearing is burned down completely because it was the cloak of the druid. So you would think, all right, this maybe would be convincing enough. But again, the king is rather irritated. He's not very humbled by all of this. So there's another attempt to kill Patrick, which then he prays again, and the earth opens up, and whoever was trying to attack him is swallowed by the earth. And then people are completely freaking out that that's now a bit too much. And immediately they fall to his feet and wish to be baptized. Also, the king is by now not necessarily convinced of the faith, but is at least like, okay, you are clearly the more powerful one. Please have mercy upon us, and you guide us to your faith. So, and with all his compassion, he forgives the king, and this is how Ireland became Christian, basically. Patrick arrived in Ireland with 60, and for another 60 years blasts over the island with all sorts of interesting stories. It's totally worthwhile to read his biography. And at 120 years old, leaves with a full purpose accomplished.
So as Patrick basically took Ireland in one generation, basically, or one or two generations, because he lived for a pretty long time, from one tradition to another without so much bloodshed. His assistant was killed and a few others there in the miracle competition, but very minimal. If you look at other countries that change the religion, you normally have to...
10 generations of bloodshed.
A lot of generations and a lot of blood in the process, but this miraculous power that is described there can very well be the cause of that.
Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, tantra and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.